Well, it does complicate things, Sarah, in a situation, a game that was already kind of complicated to begin with, in a way that Amazon may not have fully understood, believe it or not. I was talking earlier with John Boyd. He's a site selection consultant in New Jersey, and he says that most companies nowadays understand the political minefield that incentives are, and they are much more careful about engaging with the community. That's what he counsels his clients, and it certainly appears that Amazon did not do that, or do that to the extent that some of the local activists in New York expected. So Boyd says that he thinks that these sort of big national sweepstakes are probably a thing of the past, at least for now, and there will be more and more community engagement.
National sweepstakes is one thing to sort of throw away. That may have been the mistake. But in terms of the incentive, Scott, how widespread is this? Isn't this common practice?
It's very common practice, and that part of it is not going away. Companies are still going to look for tax breaks, and states and cities are still going to be giving them to them, but it happens on a much more sort of incremental level. Some of them are more kind of universal or statewide incentives for things like manufacturing. So this stuff is still going on. It's usually a lot more quiet, and again, it's usually a lot more careful than this big splashy process that Amazon engaged in for the last year and a half.
Scott, it's been surprising to me, though, how many people have confused the incentives with a giveaway, in a sense of the idea that Amazon was going to be given $3 billion to come to do with it whatever it wanted, as opposed to obviously reduce its tax bill over many years based on what it was paying and certain incentives it met. I don't know what to make of that, other than perhaps that ignorance helped to fuel the opposition to the headquarters itself.
Well, I mean, it's not entirely ignorance, David. I mean, yes, the incentives are all incremental, they're over time, and more states and cities are building in clawbacks and ways to try and protect themselves in the way that apparently New York did. Wisconsin has done that with Foxconn, but there are some things that you can't just stop, things that you can't claw back. For example, with Foxconn in Wisconsin, $4 billion in incentives. Foxconn's not going to be able to collect the incentives this year or for this past year because they didn't meet the hiring targets, but the state still had to go in and buy up land and do things like infrastructure that they may not be able to recover, or not nearly as fast as they thought they could. So some of this is money that is being spent up front. It's a bet by cities and states to lure the businesses there. Sometimes it pays off, but it's really, really tricky business.
Yeah, well, in the case of Queens, I don't believe they've really made those infrastructure improvements. A lot of people want to attach it, though, as well. Again, the opposition's got to stadium deals. I mean, it would seem to me this is a very different kind of a thing than making sure your hometown team stays and giving them some incentives to do so.
Oh, absolutely. But again, it's not entirely different because, some of this involves things like bragging rights. There's growth that was going to happen, is going to happen in Long Island City with or without Amazon. So there is a lot more care that's being put into both cities and states and municipalities giving these incentives, and again, companies receiving the incentives. There are a lot more incentives now that have to do with things like infrastructure improvements, workforce development, things that the entire community does benefit from. So there are some positive aspects of these incentives, and they should not be sort of, dismissed. But at the same time, it's very easy to get caught up in this bidding war, as 238 communities did trying to get Amazon HQ2, and look at what's happened.